All right, we are live, and by we I mean just me. I'm Kevin Roberts. Taylor Smith is not with me today, so it'll just be me going over the slate. Originally wasn't going to do a video, but then I thought, this slate is just um, really interesting, and there's money to be made here. So let's go over it. So I'm going to go just game by game, looking at each team. Have the projections in front of me here, courtesy of Robo Grinders. So that's what we're going to do. So first off, Toronto at Philly. I believe the Raptors are like 8.5-point underdogs. So obviously there is some blowout risk here. I don't see anybody standing out for the Raptors. I think Scotty Barnes is okay. Siakam is a nice price, but doesn't project especially well. And then, everybody else is just kind of there. So not super interested in the Raptors side. Over on the 76ers side, Joel Embiid looks awesome. He looks like one of the best plays on the entire slate, per usual. The guy has been wrecking. He's averaging like north of 70 fantasy points over the past week and a half or so. So, and the Raptors are not the defensive stalwarts that they used to be. So I wouldn't be too concerned there. The only thing I would be a little bit worried about would be, like I mentioned, the possibility of a blowout. But he's been doing a lot of what he's been doing lately in about three quarters, and he's been known to go into the fourth quarter even when the Sixers are up. So honestly, not that worried about him. There is Tyrese Maxey. There's kind of an interesting leverage play, but I don't love the price, although it has come down a little bit. I think he's okay. But nobody else projects that well, and this is just Embiid's team right now. Everybody's just kind of running around him, and I think he is the only priority that I'm looking at in this game, if I go to this game at all. One reason why you can fade Embiid with confidence is the presence of Jokic. He has a slightly lower projection compared to Embiid, but probably a better matchup against the Nets. Just as a whole, the Nets are not anything to be afraid of. This projects to be a better contested game. So Jokic looks really good. Jamal Murray still projects to be on a bit of a minutes limit. And his price has come way up. You know what? I'm actually looking at the FanDuel pricing. So let's kick it back over to NBA. It's not going to be that much different. So slight hiccup there. Let's see. Well, this updates. Okay. So either way, Embiid still is the top projecting guy on the slate. Jokic is just slightly behind him. Nothing really changes based off of what I've been saying to this point. And then, for Denver, it's pretty much just Jokic for me. I will say the Nets give up a lot of outside shots, in particular at the three-point line. So somebody like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is just a cheap guy who's going to play a lot, and he's going to hoist it from long range. I know it never feels good to click KCP, but sometimes for GPPs, picking these guys who are just going to sit out there and launch threes is not that bad of an idea. In yesterday's video, I did mention the Cavs had an amazing spot where they're facing the Pels, who were like bottom 10 in three-point attempts allowed and three-point makes allowed. And then sure enough, Dean Wade hit 6 threes. So that doesn't mean you can just go play these fringe ancillary pieces every time just because of a seemingly good matchup. But for tournaments, it's not something we should dismiss so quickly. On the other side, even though it's a close game, the Nets, none of them really stand out. They don't really project that well. I think Bridges, Dinwiddie, Claxton, maybe Cam Thomas, they're all in play. Cam Johnson is a good price, but nobody stands out and projects really well. So I'm not making the priorities at all. The Hawks are an amazing matchup, and the Heat are without Jimmy Butler. So this could be a pretty sneaky game. It does have a good total and a tight spread, so it is pretty stackable. Obviously, you have Trae Young. He looks to be priced fairly at almost 10K, projecting for over 51 fantasy points. I got nothing bad to say about Trae Young. The only thing stopping him would be Kyle Lowry. But with Jimmy Butler out, the Miami defense is not going to be as stingy as it normally would be. So Trae is firmly in play. I don't think any other Hawks are guys I'm going to get to. DeJounte Murray is just not projecting very well these days, and Clint Capella's price is at $7K now, which is not super appealing, and Bam is just not a good guy to go against usually. On the flip side, Bam is looking really good. His price actually has come down a little bit, but without Jimmy there, his usage just pops up quite a bit. He's projecting for 47 fantasy points, which is awesome. Tyler Hero, a little bit steep when it comes to price, but for both these guys, this matchup is just awesome. There's going to be a lot of running, a lot of gunning, and they both look like priority plays so far on this slate as far as elite spends that don't really feel like it. I mean, these are guys that are probably going to get you 40 to 45 fantasy points pretty easily, but they absolutely have the ability to get you to 60. So pairing or targeting one of these guys might make paying up for Embiid or Jokic less of a priority, but we'll figure out how that works out. As for the rest of Miami guys, nobody is priced, well enough for me to really take a bite. Lowry is 5.4, but the minutes are a little bit shaky, and so is the production. I think he's the only guy here that I would maybe take a dive on if we felt good about his minutes. But I'm mostly just looking at Bam and Hero here. For Dallas, we have known for a while that Kyrie Irving is on the shelf, and also now Luka Doncic is. So lots of usage to go around for the Mavs. I'm definitely going to be looking at the starting lineup to make my decisions there. But right off the bat, Tim Hardaway, Jaden Hardy, Derrick Jones Jr. I mean, specifically, Tim Hardaway Jr. and Jaden Hardy look like awesome smash plays. They project extremely well. They're both good prices. Really good points per dollar here. The matchup at the Rockets isn't good, and it's an 8-point spread, but I don't really care. This is good chalk to eat. You're going to want to play Tim Hardaway and Jaden Hardy and maybe a third or fourth Mav here. And if you're looking at those guys, Dwight Powell is cheap. Grant Williams is cheap. Neither project that well, but Grant Williams does project for 35 minutes. So, I mean, I might just slide Grant Williams in my lineup and say, hey, you know what? I know I'm getting 35 minutes from Grant Williams. Hopefully he hits his threes. And that might be good enough for me on this slate. And then Derrick Jones Jr. isn't that much more expensive. And again, big minutes, and he projects a little bit better. So if you are going to make that decision, I wouldn't really be too finicky over the ownership there. Right now, the ownership is projected at 28% for Derrick Jones and 19% for Grant Williams. That isn't enough for me to, make a difference. I think both guys are viable, but Derrick Jones is just the better play as it stands. On the flip side, if you are going to stack the Mavs, as you should have some consideration of a run back or maybe even a bigger game stack with Fred VanVleet and Şengün coming over on the other side from Houston. So those guys are looking really, really good. They project really well. The Mavs do not defend. They do not stop anybody. Jabari Smith would be in play if his price was right, but now he's up to 7.1 because he's had a monster game. I'm not doing that personally, and nobody's gonna be on him or anything, but it's just I'm not interested in that. Jalen Green is somewhat interesting. His minutes have fluctuated a bit. He's very scoring dependent, but it's a GPP. It's a good spot, and it's a GPP play. He can go off at any time. And I'm not seeing anything else for Houston that really pops. There is Dylan Brooks at 5'6". He's going to play. They'll get you 30-plus minutes. It's a good matchup. I just don't really feel amazing about that. For Phoenix, and by the way, while I'm going here, I'm going to pull up the news just so while I'm going, I can maybe run into any news that pops up. Because it is 2 p.m. CT now here. So nothing yet. Patrick Beverley questionable. That changes everything. And Dennis Smith is playing once again. I will say DeAnthony Melton for the Sixers did not participate in shoot-around, and he's questionable. That is something that could open up some value for Philly. It is worth noting that Seth Curry is questionable too, so that could open up a little more value for whatever Mavs guys we're looking at. But overall, not seeing anything that's really going to Oh, Malik Monk. Malik Monk is also questionable. So we'll keep going here, and we'll see how that plays into our decision making. But no massive stars beyond Luka at this point have been ruled out. So to the Suns we go, and this is a game with a really good total, the Suns versus the Kings, and it's a tight spread. So KD and Devin Booker look really, really good here. I'm going to go with KD if I'm picking one versus the other, just because he's cheaper and he projects better. Pretty simple for me. I don't think Devin Booker is a bad play at all, but Durant is just the better play. As far as the guys going down a bit, I will point out Drew Eubanks because Nurkic is out. So that is actually significant. He could be a pretty good value. He doesn't project for monster minutes, but if he starts, maybe he plays more minutes than we expect. And then he would look pretty interesting because it is not a huge slate. There is not a ton of awesome value beyond the obvious guys like on Dallas. So somebody like Eubanks could be pretty useful. There's Eric Gordon and there's Grayson Allen and Jordan Goodwin because there's no Brad Beal on this team. But those guys are very much ancillary pieces that I'm not racing to go get. On the Kings side, Malik Monk, like I said, is questionable. That could open things up a little bit for some of their outside shooters, like Harry Barnes or something. But I'm still not feeling excited to click, his name ever. There is De'Aaron Fox and there's Sabonis. Both of them project decently. But when we're looking at other guys like Bam and Sengun and Fred VanVleet and Tyler Hero, I don't think we need to force these two guys. And then you have KD too, who's about the same price as these guys, and he projects better. So if I'm looking at this game, these two guys look like potential contrarian spend-ups, but I don't think they're necessary. Last game of the night also has a really nice total, but it does project to be a possible blowout with the Warriors favored by 12. So that's not great. On the Wizards side, the only guy that really looks good would be Daniel Gafford. Projects pretty well, even though he can be kind of handsy with the fouls and sometimes just has his minutes yanked around. I think he's in the best spot for them. As far as usage goes, you're looking at Kuzma and Jordan Poole. Jordan Poole, a revenge game, going back to Golden State. That could be something, but do we really want to tie our night to Jordan Poole? Not really. This game does feel stackable. It's not like the Warriors are the Warriors of old. They definitely don't just blow everybody out or even win games as much as they used to. So I can certainly see a universe where Kyle Kuzma and Jordan Poole just go off and this is the game of the night. Certainly possible. So, some of these other bench guys are viable, but I would probably look at Kuz, Poole, Gafford here and not mess around too much with the rest. Lastly, we get to the dubs. Stephen Curry looks really good. His price is a little bit steep, but I would imagine because he's nearing 10K and it's a 12-point spread and you have Embiid and Jokic and KD is like the same price. Right now he's coming at 10% ownership. I would imagine that is right there or it comes down. That said, he is pushing for 50 fantasy points for his projection, and the Wizards are a very good matchup, pretty much the best matchup on the slate. So I could be talking to Warriors. I definitely could be talking to Curry. I do like him. And then after him, though, not a lot to love. The rookie Podziemski, don't hold me accountable for that name, but he is questionable. I believe he hurt his back in his last game. He's been playing really well and starting. His price is just about right. He projects decently for about 29 fantasy points. I'd be interested in him if he is back and not limited. But who I'm a little bit more interested in would be Trace Jackson Davis, who has looked really good over the last two games. And Steve Kerr said that he has earned a spot in the rotation. Again, we don't know what that means, but as long as Draymond Green is out, as he still is for a while, guys like that are going to be viable. So you can take a chance on him. You could look at Jonathan Kuminga. You could look at Andrew Wiggins. These guys are all certainly dicey, but Trace Jackson Davis specifically showed out in his last game. So even though he's projected for only 18 minutes, there could be a clear path to him playing a lot more than what we're seeing here, especially if this pod guy's out. So I would keep an eye on that. Obviously, in general, keep an eye on any other player news, the guys that have been listed as questionable. But for the most part, I am absolutely eating that Dallas chalk. I am absolutely going and getting at least one Miami guy. And then I'm going to consider grabbing a run back from the Houston side. Because if you're playing those Mavs guys, you're either just eating that chalk and just assuming like Dallas doesn't have many bodies and they're going to play most of the game regardless of a blowout or not. Or you're kind of hoping that the 3/4 is enough for them. But you could just bank on it being a good game. And then like Şengün or Fred VanVleet paying off on the other side. And a full stack is obviously in play too. But if you don't do that, I think getting to KD or Curry is pretty appealing. So a lot of ways to go on this slate. Hopefully this rundown helps you start to finalize your process and kind of look at which guys look really playable, which guys project well, which game environments look the best. I personally will probably be paying down a little bit on my top end spends. I do not think I'm going to pay for Jokic or Embiid on this slate, just because there's so many good guys just right around 10K or below that project really well. And I think if you avoid one of those big 11K spends, you might just get that one extra big body that can help you climb up the ladder here in GPP. All right, so that's it for this video. If I helped you in any way, go ahead and hit the like and subscribe. And we'll probably be away for the majority of the holiday, but probably next time you see me, I'll be joined with Taylor Smith. Thanks for tuning in.